People like to break it down into this nice pretty pyramid, right? And it's not. Caste earlier, before the British got to India, was much more complicated. Thousands upon thousands of castes, castes within castes, etc. It was a very complicated thing that covered. It wasn't just like a thing to break down social class on who deserves to be wealthy or not. It was about it fulfilled like occupation, your duties, your responsibilities to society.
Hey, can someone tell us different, like the caste system? Can you like say a few things about that? Like what do we need to know? What could you explain to the class, or how could you explain that to the class?
I mean, like in India, it was like a big thing. It is still persistent in some areas, but then the more educated side of the country, they don't really like believe in that anymore.
Dude, hang on. It's not that they don't believe. It's still very active.
Yeah, but they're not like, they don't speak a lot about it.
So you don't talk about it a lot.
Yeah, like in like public or something. Like you might still believe it, but you're not as vocal about it.
So, but in India, about 70% of Indians, their friendship group, their acquaintances, their friends, their work people, everything is mostly or only of their same caste, right? What would be identified as their caste. So it's like, so it's still somehow that happens. So it's kind of like here, like when you look out over the class right here, if we were to put all of you together, if we were to study the family income of you all in the class and who you are, what you're going to see here at Penn State is rich kids gravitate to rich kids, upper middle class kids to upper middle class kids, poor kids to poor kids, man. That's just what it is. And like you're going to see that. And in a class this size, you see it in the Indian community here. The wealthiest Indians, somehow they all find each other. It's like they become the friends. So it's a similar thing kind of like that. Okay, but say more about the caste system. Yeah.
I think from my understanding of it, it's become more systemic. Like the differences are like a systemic thing. It's like systemic inequalities.
Like class,
even like race. You see systemic inequalities from a time when it was much more prevalent, from when it dictated a lot of things. One thing to note about caste, people like to break it down into this nice pretty pyramid, right? And it's not. Caste earlier, before the British got to India, was much more complicated. Thousands upon thousands of castes, castes within castes, etc. It was a very complicated thing that covered. It wasn't just like a thing to break down social class on who deserves to be wealthy or not. It was about it fulfilled like occupation, your duties, your responsibilities to society. And in terms of that, right, like for example, and when the British came, they essentially took the existing caste system, simplified it, and made it into a way, essentially a rephrasing of normal class systems, right?
So that they could dominate more easily.
And then also, this created differences from what was originally the case. So Brahmins, way back, used to be the caste of teachers and stuff. So they were educated, but also not very wealthy. But because they were educated, when the British came, they took the Brahmin caste and made them into the higher-ups, the workers, the managers, and they became the wealthy oppressor caste through that.
All right. Let me ask you, do you guys know the reason for the caste system? Like what its primary sociological purpose is? Do you have a sense of that?
Yeah, it was divided originally based on the profession of the people.
Yeah.
So the Brahmins were the priests and the more educated class, and then the Kshatriyas were the rulers, like the kings and the queens and all of them. And then the Vaishyas were traders, and then the Shudras were the working class. So that's how it was originally divided.
So listen though, so here, let me just say this, right? You gotta have a way to make sense of who's rich and who's poor. You need a way to do that. Who the privileged people are and the underprivileged are. Because if you don't have a way to do that, then you'd have just nonstop conflict. Social stability comes from people believing primarily that their station in life is the station in life where they should be. And so every society needs to have that. And so this caste system is a system where you're born into a station in life. And when you're born into that station in life, that's just where it is, man. The gods have decided that that's where you're going to be. And so you don't have to fight it. You're not battling anything. And there's a certain acceptance, and it makes things really nice, right? Like, this is your job. You're the Dalits. You're the people that are going to clean everything. You're going to people at the lowest end, and that's just where you're going to be. So don't fight it. And so the caste system is simply a way to make sure that that happens in a smooth way. So India, you've got this the system. It's like, all right, here it is. We don't have to think about it. Everyone knows their place. And when you know your place, then this makes sense. In a class system, where you can move up and down, but you don't always, right? This is one of you said this. Like, the class system is like an invisible caste system. Like, many of you think, like, you're here, like you're going to study finance at Penn State, let's say, right? You're studying finance at Penn State. And you're like, oh, this is great. I got into SMEAL. I'm studying finance here. And so I'm going to go try to get a job on Wall Street. It's like, dudes, do you understand that you're going to be competing against the kids who study finance at Duke, at Stanford, MIT, Harvard, Princeton, Yale, Cornell, Brown? Yeah, you're at Penn State. Good for you. And you feel good about yourselves, right? You're like, yeah, I'll do okay. I'm doing pretty good. You're competing against those kids, man. And that's not that different than people in one of the lower categories of the caste in India trying to compete against somebody at the upper caste. It's like, but we've here in this system, we've taken on this ideology that, hey, but you can make it if you work really hard. But what's behind that ideology is, dudes, take all the Penn State finance kids and put them up against all these other kids. One or two of you are going to make it. Most all of them are going to make it. You don't compete. You're not going to compete. There's no competition even. The game is rigged. They're there. They come from different families. They come from a different place. So in a way, you got this caste system that's really rigid, right? Although it's breaking down a little bit. But this one's kind of rigid too. You just don't see the rigidity.